It's time to accelerate. Hi, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Join me as I host conversations with the leading experts in sales, marketing, sales automation, sales process, leadership, management, training, coaching, any resource that I believe to help you accelerate the growth of your sales, your business, and most importantly, you. Hello, and welcome to Accelerate. I am really looking forward to talking to my guest today. Joining me is Duane Cummings. He is a speaker. I heard him speak just recently, as a matter of fact, an author. He wrote a book called The Sensational Salesman, and he is the current CEO and founder of the Sensational Group. And he's a trusted advisor to organizations and individuals around the world regarding professional and personal development. And lives with a great motto that he has, which is to aid others, act on ideas, and achieve sensational results. So, Duane, welcome to Accelerate.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Andy. It's a pleasure to be here.
So take a minute to fill out that introduction I started with. Tell us about yourself.
Wow. Well, it sounds Pollyanna, but I want to make the world a better place. So I serve others wherever I can. I avail myself and meet people where they're at. So some days, as you know, I'm a writer, and other days I'm a speaker, and I'm still involved in several companies. I have a consulting company, so sometimes I'm helping businesses. We are involved in a lot of nonprofit stuff. So, sometimes we're just showing up there and doing what we can. But I guess I'm kind of living an epic dream kind of life. Yeah, I have to pinch myself every day, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, let's start with you want to make the world a better place. I mean, it's from some people that may come across as, hey, yeah, I say that. Yeah, I want to make the world a better place. Yeah. But it's something that having heard you talk, I mean, I know this is a very sincere way that you live your life. I mean, how did you boil it down to that?
Well, some people say, oh, don't bite off more than you can chew, or, I want to solve hunger, but that's too big. It's just one drop in an ocean, whatever. But I know that every day I can interact with people, with organizations, just how I handle myself and how I live my life as an example for other people. So if I focus, be intentional, be purposeful, I can make ripples. I can make a difference in the world. So, if we happen to be in a place where somebody's hungry, you feed them. If you happen to be in a place where somebody's struggling with business acumen and they're maybe an entrepreneur or a corporation that just can't get over the hump, things are going wrong, then you roll up your sleeves and you get involved with them and you contribute the value or the knowledge that you have. If it's a relationship, you get in there and you teach people or share the lessons that you've learned, and maybe they assimilate and apply them in their life, and it turns it around. So, myself, can I do it all alone? No, I know that. And so hence why I, share my message and continue to get out there, because then if other people will get on board and they do their little bit and somebody else does their little bit, it's kind of like the old phrase, many hands make light work.
Yeah. And in your case, I mean, especially you talk about your work with the nonprofits and charities and so on, is the reward is not monetary, obviously, but I would hazard a guess to say that having done that work and continue to do that work, that it feeds the profit side of your business.
Yeah, I think that people are always watching, whether you know it or not. They're always watching, and so then if they see that your intentions are pure, you're really out there making a difference. I don't look at it as sacrificing, but some people would say, oh, you're sacrificing your time or your resources to serve other people and help, in that world. Then, they become your support system and your cheerleaders, and they become your, potential clients, and they are your raving fans, by Kenneth Blanchard's name. And I think by doing the right things, you also attract and you filter in the people that you probably would love to do business with, would love to be around, that kind of thing.
All right. So I'm a huge soccer fan, and you talk about how you played professional soccer. So where did you play soccer?
Yeah. And back in my day, it was not the same. We're talking about, mid-late 80s, early 90s, what everybody thinks of now. So you were in the middle of the NASL heyday where you had Pele and Giorgio Chinaglia and all those guys here.
Right.
And then the start of the MLS. So I had to ply my trade, like with the Oklahoma City Slickers indoor. Then they were Stampede outdoor. At one time, I owned the New Orleans Rage, which is indoor. The Tucson Amigos, these teams that lots of people would have never heard of. Lots of people didn't know. It's kind of like double A or single A, maybe even triple A, ball. But
I used to go to San Diego Soccer's games, which is the indoor team here. They were quite good, and that was amazing. Fun game to watch.
Yeah, so I started out originally training with the Phoenix Inferno, which, they were in that same CISL type league, MISL, Major Indoor Soccer League, with the Soccers, and then the Soccers play outdoor. And so, I say I played professional soccer, and I did get paid and all that, but you were also in a period of time where they said, hey, part of your contract is you got to go do 20 camps. And, we might get you a little per diem food money, extra bonus. You're not getting a check for $200,000,
No, not in those days for sure.
Right. And so, I got to play a few games in Japan. Probably the biggest claim to fame was playing against Moscow Spartak, which I was.
Oh, nice.
But I was in over my head, and, you always think you're better than you are at that age. But, I kind of got to chase that dream. And that I lettered in 5 sports in high school. I really never would have thought that I would have gone on to play soccer, but I was really not that good at the other sports. And, I did a bit of military time because I wasn't doing what I was supposed to in college. And so I played for the All-Army team, which was great because I got to play in different places around the world, and just carried on with soccer. Yeah.
All right. So final question about soccer is, so what teams do you follow now?
Oh, well, this is where I got to be careful because I'll alienate tons of people that are in my life, but candidly, I've been a Newcastle guy from a long way back.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I know, but Kevin Keegan back in the old days, and I was the director of coaching for a club called Magpies, so Geordies are in my heart.
Okay, all right. Yeah, no, I just said sorry, not because there's nothing wrong with Newcastle. It's just that people aren't soccer fans. They just were unfortunately relegated from the Premier League to the Championship.
Now, our youngest son's named after Ian Rush, who was a great Welsh footballer.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, very cool. All right, enough soccer talk. We could go on forever. This is not, unfortunately, a soccer show. I may start one of those, though. But so, there's a theme in everything you do, which is this word sensational. So define sensational for us. What does it mean for you?
Well, it's tough because, the world looks at sensational. They hear things like sensationalized or, it's kind of the wrong connotation a lot of times. But for me, it's really just something that had great public interest or there's excitement around it. And the words awesome are used all the time. Amazing, fantastic, remarkable, great. And so when I just began to look at where could I have a little bit of a difference? Where could maybe a word ring on people's ear that they don't hear all the time? Sensational was available, and there just wasn't much out there in the public domain. It's been years, but when the internet was going on, those websites, there was not really much in sensational. There were no books about sensational. The drawback is, and I mentioned this at the talk I think that you were at, is if you misspell my name, Duane Cummings, and you throw the word sensational in there, you get an African-American porn star. That's the other person you get besides me. Now, I think he's kind of out of the industry now, and we've been doing things long enough that he's kind of pushed down the Google search rankings, to maybe page 10 or 12 or whatever. But that was the only thing I was really combating. But how many things do you do in your life that are truly sensational?
Well, I guess that's right. So that's the key point. I mean, how do you define that? So sort of create that context for people listening as sensational, because you start to differentiate it from sort of the overused, awesome cliches that we hear so often. Right.
And so people ask us all the time, we do hashtag a sensational life. And we just started a global art project where artists in different cities around the world are creating murals of what they think, their concept of what a sensational life is. And they do the mural representing the city and their own ideas. And I think sensational is different for different people, and that's what I'm really hoping they do. The word sensational for me, it could be the hour that I spend with my wife holding hands in our hammock in our backyard. That will be a sensational hour for me. That will be one of those, Kodak moments. If you want to go back to that period of time, it'll be a Hallmark moment. So sensational to me could be anything, and other people can take it however they want. we've been doing things around the world now, and some people come up to me and they say, the most sensational thing that happened in my life was, and then they'll say something that other people might have thought was kind of average, like they got a new bicycle, or they're going to go to college. But to them, that's sensational. It's an opportunity to use that word and attach it to something good in your life when other words would just kind of be lost in the noise. Ooh, I never thought of it that way, but I think that's the way it should be. It should be.
Okay, all right. You can pay me a royalty on the definition, but
it's got a consulting fee. It'll be in the mail.
Okay. So. Well, I mean, it's really it's personal, as you talked about.
Yeah.
But it's really, I think you're talking about in a sense that I think is really unique. That it's really about appreciation.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, at least that's what I take from it when I read your materials and so on and listen to you talk. It's really about appreciation for what you have that makes it sensational. Appreciating that moment you have with your wife by yourself, alone, perfect weather, swaying in a hammock in your backyard in suburban Atlanta. I mean, it's like, yeah, you can picture that, and you can say, okay, that I have an appreciation for that. Whereas, everything that's awesome and so on just seems sort of temporary and fleeting.
Yeah, I guess if you wanted to do sensational, for me, now that you say it that way, it does equate to gratitude, to being grateful. So sensational evening, a sensational experience, that's something that I'm grateful for. It really moved me. It changed me. I have gratitude towards. So that's a good way to look at it. Thank you for that.
So you wrote a book called The Sensational Salesman.
Yeah.
And the book was written in parable form, but I mean, how would you define tell us what the sensational salesman or salesperson is?
Yeah. And it's funny because when we were working to decide the title, we had tons of feedback, beta readers, women, et cetera, that said, hey, it's got to be salesperson. I said, but you don't get it. The main character is a man. So I kind of have to go with salesman. And it's the first book in this series. So the next one that's about ready to come out is The Sensational Leader. Then there's Sensational Spouse, Parent, Mentor, Entrepreneur. There's a bunch. But the first one basically lays the foundation for everything. And a guy falls on his face and gets a mentor in his life that teaches him 15 lessons that we all should know and should live our life by. But he'd kind of gotten off track. And as people begin to find out, there are real people mixed in the books. So although it's a parable and it's listed as fiction, there are some real people in there, like Bob Berg, who wrote The Go-Giver.
Yes,
he's in the book. Yeah, so he's in the book, and I do it in a lot of reasons. One is because these people are involved in my life. Two, I want to pay honor and tribute, and three, they have great content and lessons to teach the world. So I weave them into my story, but by also writing in parable form, I can kind of share my life because it's the arc of my life. That's what the whole series is. It's me 30 years ago falling on my face, and then all the lessons I've learned.
What would you do to fall on your face?
Yeah, it's kind of be a spoiler alert, but here's what I can tell you is in my personal life, I had, had a lot of successes early on by anybody's definition and was achieving certain things. And I lied in a situation that caused my life to fall apart. I mean, that's the truth. I just lied. And everything fell in, and so then it was basically like you hit that rock bottom, and now you find a solid foundation, which the first lesson in the book is honesty and integrity. So although it's called a sensational salesman, it's about much more than that. There's communication and branding and relationships and all the lessons I had to learn to kind of rebuild my life. So I hope, I don't want to spoiler it too much, but
well, I'm sure you won't, because we're not going to be able to get through all 15 lessons, but right. I mean, I think it's important. I mean, it can be just something simple, which I imagine at the time it maybe didn't appear to be significant for you, but these things can come back, the lack of integrity and honesty, and take away everything you have.
Yeah, and just so you know, it wasn't like I stayed up for days and plotted this scheme that I was going to defraud somebody or whatever. No. It was, in the course of our lives, whether we're trying to impress people or whether we're trying to gain a small advantage or whatever's going on, there's this tendency to make things bigger than they are. The whole fake book world versus Facebook, and people that go years and then all of a sudden they get fired from a university because somebody looked at their resume and they found out they never graduated college, or, those kind of things, they can catch up to you. And so they did catch up to me in my life. And I just had to go back and say, okay, this is going to be day one now of my new life. And I will never make that mistake again. And then, that was built on honesty and integrity. And then to get to that point, I had a mentor in my life that took me through an exercise that took me about 3 months of determining everything that I believed and why I believed it. So whether it was about money, religion, what I believed success really meant, I did the work and I did the exercise. And then I went on to, which I already knew how to communicate. At least I had been educated how to communicate. I just wasn't really communicating. So the first few years of my marriage with my wife were horrible. I was a horrible husband. I did a disservice to her as a wife and a mother. And I had to get back on track and use my communication skills to put ourselves in a better position in life. So the chapters go sequentially of the lessons I learned, and they kind of build on each other.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And so tell us something else again about, not just honesty and integrity. I think that's such an incredible lesson to start with. I mean, I had the maybe unintentional good fortune to learn a lesson about integrity in my very first job interview for my first job that stuck with me my entire career. And so I think if you can learn that lesson early on as the beginning of your career and understand that is the foundation for everything flows from that, boy, you can't learn a better lesson than that. So what next in terms of your learning journey came through?
Well, things that would seem like everybody got taught at one time in your life, maybe, and you just get away from them, like common courtesy, just being an active listener and, being kind to other people, being respectful. We live in a world now that's 140 characters or less. Everything happens real fast. The world's gotten small. And so people got in a hurry, and we sometimes just forget, even to hold a door for someone. So, going back and reliving those kind of things and not judging books by their cover. I can't tell you how many times I've met someone, and in my old mentality, my old life, I would have breezed right by them because I've, stereotyped and pigeonholed them.
Well, that's an interesting question for you, because several things you said here, it really comes through and I work with companies, and I teach this one, is that how do you teach people to learn to listen to someone else without judgment? To be there, to drop the filters and the biases that you might inherently have. Is how do you teach people to understand, if you really want to connect with somebody, is you got to listen to them without judging what they're saying.
Yeah, that's 100% correct. And my belief is, what I've come to find, and the evidence that I've received back in my world, is most people learn best by experience. So if you can create experiences for people to learn the lesson, they are immersed in something where they really get it. And if you can't create the experience, then the second best thing for me is telling a story that they can assimilate with. So, when I have real life stories where I can share of, somebody I met as a waitress, who might have worked in a Hooters and you would have underestimated, becomes a Kat Cole, who's now the president CEO of Cinnabon and, one of the women in the world. Now, all of a sudden, you have something that you can draw upon. It's real. And somebody can go, oh, I met a lady yesterday and I might have underestimated her. Because for most people, until we see something, it's hard for us to get it. It's hard for us to believe it or to learn the lesson. So you can tell someone, hey, be an active listener, stop judging, stop doing this, but they don't really hear you. But when you assimilate and you say, okay, have you ever been in this situation where somebody underestimated you, where and then they start thinking about it and they're like, yeah. Or if you, give them a story that they can assimilate to. And then even more powerfully is, sometimes as a leader, you've got to create experiences where you put somebody through something that it's discovery, right? Because that's our best learning opportunity, is when we discover something and the light bulb comes on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, interesting. It's sort of playing off that is something you'd written was interesting. You're talking about how Many companies, especially today, they just play the odds utilizing a burn and turn mentality, I think is the term you used. And we see that in sales a lot these days. The whole focus is on the volume and the quantity of things we do versus the quality of what we do. And same thing is, how do you work on a company level if you're advising a company to change their approach to become more other-centric or service-oriented, that's really to be sensational, as we talk about. How do you advise a CEO to start working on his culture to change?
Yeah, well, you start with what he believes. That's or she. You got to know what they think and how they're wired. And so, if there's somebody that's fact-based, a publicly traded company, for instance, that's trying to appease shareholders and they got to hit a number every quarter and that kind of thing, then you're going to have to give them raw data, statistics, numbers. That says, with better employee engagement, less turnover, your profitability is better, your customer retention is better. You're going to have to give them that kind of data, and then they go, oh yeah, I never had that before. I never knew that was the case. For other people, if they're wired as a nurturer, for instance, and I don't know if you've read this book, but Five Voices. It's written by the co-founders of Giant Worldwide.
No, I've not read that.
Oh. Well, they're also the ones that originally started LeaderCast, which used to be John Maxwell's LeaderCast. But
right.
Yeah, Five Voices. It teaches you about people's internal wirings, whether they're a nurturer, a pioneer, or those kind of things. And so once you understand what kind of person that is, then you can meet them in their space and you can educate them in a way that they digest it. Because if I go into a meeting with a CEO and he is an engineer, he's going to want, or they're going to want the facts. Like, give me the statistics, give me the raw data. If I tell them 1.725 and it was 1.721, they're going to get me, right? They're going to, yeah, boop, you're wrong. So that person needs the facts. If I go into an organization and the leader of that organization started it in the company in their garage and they've grown it because of it's their passion, it's their belief, they sacrificed everything to do it, they'll never give up on their people. I can talk numbers to them all day and they don't care. They're like, I'll lose money to keep my people happy. So I've got to be talking about their emotional, intelligence and the people part of it. So it really depends on who you're working with, how you approach, I think.
Very interesting. Well, another topic I wanted to talk to you about is, last topic we'll talk before we get to the last segment of the show, is you've written recently about gender gap, and in the context of soccer, and that is one of your passions, one of mine. You talked about the dispute that exists right now between the U.S. women's national team and the U.S. Soccer Federation over equal pay compared to the men's national soccer team. And I thought, bravo to you for taking on that issue. Is, we still see this gender gap in so many professions, and I'll just talk about sales. We still see it in sales. I mean, studies that still come out showing that unequal pay exists, unequal opportunities exist for men, women versus men, and so on. Again, tapping into your work as you advise CEOs and companies, is how do they close this gap? Where does it start?
Yeah, I think one is awareness. So, anything that you want to change or move in a different direction from, you got to know where you are and then kind of how you got there. So did you get there by accident? Did someone put you there? And in the case of gender gap, I think a long time ago, as I wrote in the paper, some people made a decision to model corporate structure after the military. And so the original model was kind of broken because corporations and militaries don't have the same goals. And, back then they didn't have women involved in higher positions, et cetera. And they're very rarely now even involved in combat. So we got the wrong model. So the first thing is everybody has to go, oh, that's what happened. Now we're aware. Now they go, well, why in the heck do we still do it? Because over time, things change. We originally used to have carburetors. Now we have fuel injection and, things change. And for whatever reason, we have been slow to change in gender gap. And I think it's just because people weren't aware how we got there. I mentioned that in what I wrote. If you go search and you talk to people, and I've talked to university presidents and very smart academic people and politicians, they just don't know how we got there. So I think, hey, here's how we got there. Here's our awareness. Now let's go somewhere else. And I think that's the first step. And then it takes people like you that have a voice and other influencers to step up and go, like the women's U.S. soccer team, they generate more money. They've won more games. They won more championships. In every matrix, they are ahead of the game compared to the men's team. So the bottom line is pay them more. That's it.
Yeah, not 1/3 as much, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, good. Well, thank you. We're going to move into the last segment of the show. I've got some standard questions I ask all my guests. And once we get through this section, I'll give you a chance to tell people how to find out more about you. So the first question I have is a hypothetical scenario that all my guests have answered. It's really interesting to see how the answers come out. Is in this scenario, you, Duane Cummings, have just been hired as a new VP of sales at a company they've lost the recipe for sales. The sales stalled out. They're just hit a brick wall. So CEO wants things turned around quickly. What two things could you do your first week on the job that could have the biggest impact?
Well, I kind of did this in not sales, but in another area. And I spent time with and met with, it depends on the scope of the company and how big it is, of course, but I did every job and I spent time with every person, not just in the sales. So I would go to operations. I would go to, procurement. I'd go to every position and spend time being empathetic, getting in their world and understanding them. Even if it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes going, okay, what are your challenges? What do you feel good about? What do you think is our assets and our liabilities? How do you look at sales? How do you feel the sales team is, et cetera? And I would do my due diligence as far as let's take the pulse of everybody involved in this company right now, because everybody in the company is in sales, regardless of whether they think they are or they have that title.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so then the second thing I would do is once I think I had a clear plan, I would communicate with everyone involved. Once, of course, you get your superior or the leader's approval, I would communicate with everyone involved the blueprint. Here is where we are. And from what we've gathered in our information, here are our assets, liabilities. Here is where I think we should go first so that everybody's in on it. There's no secrets. There's no wondering what's the new guy up to? What's he doing over here? What's his intention? Everybody knows. And then everybody can either get on board or you quickly find out, they don't like the idea. They don't whatever. But by sharing that information instantly, and you've already done your due diligence, so they know you did some homework. You're not just guessing because you've asked their opinion. It gives everybody a chance to say, you know what do we have to lose? Let's do this now versus he doesn't share what he's thinking. He doesn't share and he doesn't have the right information because he never asked us our opinion. So we're going to push back for a while before we get on board.
Right. Yeah. The passive resistance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great answer. Good. So some rapid fire questions. You can give me one-word answers or elaborate if you wish. And the first one is when you, Duane Cummings, are out selling your services, what's your most powerful sales attribute?
Listening.
Who's your sales role model?
My wife.
Love it. What's one book besides your own that every salesperson should read?
The Go-Giver by Bob Berg.
Love that book. Love Bob Berg. Great guy. Everybody that's listening, go out and buy the Go-Giver. It's a great book. Finally, last question. What music's on your playlist these days?
Ooh. So this is going to be more than one word because
Sure.
range from, Frank Sinatra to hip hop to Keith Urban to music soundtracks, but I probably have 100 mashups, which are lots of songs put together. And I'm totally full, so I have to delete music every once in a while. Yeah, but my wife and I, our favorite song is "Shut Up and Dance," and that's kind of how we start every day.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, good, Duane. Thanks for being on the show today. And so, tell people how they can find out more about you.
Well, Andy, the simplest way is to go to DuaneCummings.com, DuaneCummings, because at the top are all the icons where you can connect with me on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. DuaneCummings.com, Duane Cummings. So thank you very, very much, Andy.
Oh, thank you for being on the show. And remember, friends, make it a part of your day every day to deliberately learn something new to help you accelerate your success. And an easy way to do that is to make this podcast, Accelerate, a part of your daily routine. Listen on your commute, in the gym, or maybe as part of your morning sales meeting. That way you won't miss any of my conversations with top business experts like my guest today, Duane Cummings, who shared his expertise about how to accelerate the growth of your business. So thanks for joining me, and until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone. Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you heard and want to make sure you don't miss any upcoming episodes, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.com. For more information about today's guest, visit my website at andypaul.com.